What would you do if you found out your family had been hiding the existence of a sibling from you? The faint hum of the office fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Emily sat motionless in the cramped, impersonal conference room. The late afternoon sun spilled through the narrow blinds in thin slats, throwing sharp lines of light and shadow onto the scarred surface of the table. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and paper, a scent woven into the fabric of failed dreams. Her fingers twisted nervously around the worn leather strap of her old journal, the one thing she carried like a talisman. The familiar textures were grounding, even as the room's cold sterility pressed down. Opposite her, the publisher's editor tapped idly on a stack of rejection letters, her tone clinical but not unkind. "We reviewed your manuscript thoroughly, Emily," the editor began, voice calm but final. "Your writing is sincere, even beautiful in places, but it lacks the market appeal we're looking for." "I'm sorry." Emily's throat tightened. Heat rose unbidden to her cheeks. The rejection wasn't new, but the sting was fresh each time, a reminder of doubts sown deep. Her eyes flicked down to the letters, the neat black typefaces mocking the raw hope she'd poured onto the pages. "I see," she whispered, voice barely more than breath. Her hands clenched the journal tighter, knuckles white beneath the faded leather. The room seemed to close in, walls shrinking, the air thickening, leaving her adrift in a sea of unsaid failures. Outside, the waves rolled steadily, unseen but restless, like the pulse of a time-worn secret. A distant cry of a seagull sliced through the silence, sharp and mournful, tugging at the edges of memory. Her heart pounded with the ache of wanting to be seen, to be understood, to belong to some unspoken narrative greater than this small, suffocating moment. The editor's apologies drifted into a hollow echo as Emily rose with careful grace, gathering her old journal. There's a fragile tether between past and future. The golden hues of the fading sun cast a melancholy light on her auburn hair, now loosely bound in a casual bun. She paused at the door, the subtle weight of unshed tears balancing on the threshold. With a quiet breath, she stepped back into the empty lobby, the air heavy with the scent of salt and forgotten stories. The worn wooden floors creaked beneath her steady steps, leading her toward the narrow staircase that wound upward, a pathway towards the attic, towards the shadows she'd long avoided. The dim attic window caught a sliver of fading light, scattering dust motes like fleeting memories. There, amid the whispers of old letters and faded photographs, lay the torn edges of a photograph, her family, but not quite whole. A fragment of another life, a brother she never knew, whose name had been erased from the story she'd been told. The attic's muted colors, the warm, dying golds and quiet blues swirl around her, the light through the window painting a fragile halo on the leather covers of her journal. The shadows seemed to lean in, heavy with unsaid truths and veiled histories. Emily's fingers brushed the photograph's torn edges. Her breath caught, the boundary between past and present trembling. The attic was no longer just a refuge, but a doorway. She sat down slowly, journal open now and ready, the creak of the wooden floor beneath her punctuating the stillness. The sea's distant murmur thrummed like a heartbeat beneath the attic's fragile light, a fragile beginning to the unraveling to come. The afternoon light waned as Emily stood in the cluttered kitchen of her childhood home, the air thick with unspoken tension. She gripped the worn leather strap of her old journal, a comforting weight amidst the turmoil, and faced her family, her voice taut with frustration and desperation. "You don't understand," she whispered, voice breaking beneath the weight of years of suppressed dreams and silent sacrifices. "This isn't just about writing. It's about who I am, who I'm supposed to be." Her mother's eyes narrowed, lips pressed in a carefully rehearsed mask of practicality, betraying none of the tenderness beneath. "Emily, we only want what's best for you. Sometimes that means putting dreams aside." Her father's steady gaze didn't waver, but beneath it lay a subtle edge of disappointment, a fracture slowly widening between past expectations and present realities. Silence settled, thick and suffocating. The wounds of rejection festered, each word unspoken a bitter pill. Emily's heart pounded with the ache of invisibility, the sting sharper in the small, worn kitchen than at any publisher's desk. She moved toward the window, backlit by the fading golden light spilling across the garden, heavy scent of salt and seagrass filtering in with the cooling breeze. The sight should have been soothing, but it only sharpened the hollow echo growing within her. The worn photograph lying forgotten on the counter caught her eye, a torn fragment, edges frayed like her own battered hopes. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it, pulling the pieces together but never quite able to recreate the whole. Her gaze lifted to the shadowed attic doorway nearby, an unspoken invitation to confront the fragments of her past, to seek the truths hidden beneath years of silence. The attic window caught the last light, bleeding it soft and warm into the gathered dust and memories cloaked in shadow. The quiet creak of the heavy grandfather clock echoed faintly, the relentless passage of time, ticking toward revelations she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Her chest tightened with the weight of loneliness and misunderstanding, but beneath it stirred a fragile ember of resolve. The rejection was not an end, but a fissure, cracks through which the light might one day pierce. Moving slowly toward the stairs, journal in hand, Emily's eyes caught a whisper of folded paper tucked in a cracked floorboard, an invitation from the past. Her fingers brushed it delicately, heart thudding against ribs, the first pulse of hope beneath the deepening twilight. Outside, the Atlantic churned with endless persistence, waves hurling themselves against the shore with a ceaseless, tireless surge, a constant reminder that beneath every ebb lies an inevitable flow. The scene closed on Emily's figure ascending the attic stairs, a silhouette bathed in the attic's shifting light, a fragile beacon poised at the threshold of forgotten truths and newfound courage. The dust hung suspended, flecks of gold in the slanting sunlight, the attic's quiet promise waiting to unfold. The wooden stairs groaned beneath Emily's cautious footsteps as she ascended into the attic, a forgotten realm suspended between shadow and light. Dust motes danced lazily in the narrow beams filtering through the cracked window, casting lingering halos that embraced the weathered relics of generations past. Boxes of brittle newspapers and antique lace curtains rested half-forgotten, wrapped silently in the secrets of time. Emily's breath caught in her throat as her eyes were drawn to an old wooden chest, its surface mottled and worn by decades of neglect. With trembling fingers, she lifted the iron latch, and a faint cloud of age and memory burst forth, weaving through the stale air. Inside, a pile of faded photographs and letters lay tangled, a fragile cache of lives never fully told. Her gaze settled on a torn photograph, its jagged edges a stark contrast to the softness in the sunlit faces it held. The image was of a family long distant, but etched into the corner was a brother's face she had never known, an unknown thread in the tapestry of her own blood. The realization crackled like electricity beneath her skin. A sudden rush of questions flooded her mind, mingling with the ache of loss and the tremulous stirrings of something fierce and unknown. This fragment was more than paper. It was a fragment of herself, shattered and yearning for repair. Clark's old letters, yellowed and fading, bore delicate script addressed to her grandmother, whispered echoes of a child's presence, a name cautiously omitted from family lore, a silence longer than any spoken word. As she read, the attic light seemed to pulse in response, a soft flicker that mirrored the dawning revelation poised on the edge of understanding. A sigh escaped her lips, mingling with the creak of the old floorboards beneath her. The warm glow from the window waned as heavy clouds gathered beyond, draping the small room in blue and gray shadows, a physical metaphor for the storm beginning to swell within her soul. But amidst the swelling dusk, a clarity shimmered like the sea's unyielding tide, persistent and inevitable. Emily closed the chest gently, clutching the torn photograph close, a talisman against the shattering. The attic breathed around her, alive with secrets pressing to surface, and promise rustling in the quiet shadows. Her eyes lifted to the window again, watching the last golden hues retreat below the horizon, giving way to the profound indigo of night. It was not an end, but a threshold, a fragile, tremulous first step into the unknown dark. The slow pulse of the sea whispered below, a lullaby both haunting and hopeful. Emily sat among the relics, the leather journal resting on her lap like a lifeline, as the attic swallowed her silhouette in a soft, enfolding embrace. The camera lingered on her face, a canvas of pain, awe, and an awakening that would not be silenced. The scene faded to the gentle flicker of the attic window light, the beacon of revelation poised to guide her through the shadows ahead. The attic air was thick with dust and the smell of old paper, the only light coming in through the small, grimy window casting a muted amber glow on the scattered relics of bygone days. Emily crouched amid stacks of forgotten books and musty boxes, the weight of the torn photograph pressed between the pages of her leather journal like a lingering breath of a life scarcely known. Her fingers trembling, she reached for a bundle of faded letters tied together with a brittle ribbon, delicate threads of the past entwining tightly around her present. The attic was filled with the low hum of the sea nearby, waves lapping rhythmically against jagged cliffs far below, as if echoing the beating of her heart, slow, hesitant, yet alive. Each letter bore a faded postmark and delicate handwriting, addressed to her grandmother in an era when secrets were both sanctuaries and prisons. Emily unfolded the first carefully, the paper crackling softly beneath her touch, and began to read lines that whispered tales of a brother she never met, his life veiled in mystery and silence. The atmosphere thickened with bittersweet nostalgia, mingled with the unspoken questions clawing at her resolve. The warmth of the attic's light seemed to pulse with the unvoiced hopes buried within the fading ink, even as the shadows gathered at the edges of the room, folded tightly around truths long concealed. Her voice broke the profound silence, a fragile murmur carrying across the cramped space. "Who were you, really?" The torn photograph slipped carefully from between the pages, drifting to the floor like a fractured memory seeking recognition. Emily's heart clenched, a tumult of grief and yearning swirling within her as she traced the fragmented image, piecing together a story not fully hers yet irrevocably shaping her own. Beyond the window, the coastal breeze stirred, carrying the salt tang of the sea and the distant call of a morning gull. The attic light flickered softly, a subtle dance between illumination and darkness, mirroring the tentative flicker of courage rising within Emily's chest. With cautious determination, she pressed on, sifting through letters and mementos with growing urgency. Each discovery was a step deeper into a labyrinth of forgotten histories and hidden scars. Questions multiplied like shadows, the space between revelation and fear narrowing as the depths of family secrets beckoned with both promise and peril. A sudden draft swept the attic, rattling the loose papers and stirring the pages of her journal. Emily's breath caught as a new letter, one she hadn't noticed before, fluttered free, landing open at her feet. The words were faint but unmistakably a plea, a confession, a key to a past she had only just begun to uncover. The golden light wavered once more, the attic's fragile glow caught in the tender balance between truth and concealment. Emily knelt, hands steady now, eyes wide with the unspoken vow that she would follow the shadows wherever they led. The scene closed on the flickering window light, a beacon in the dusk holding the silence between the sea's endless pulse and the unraveling of a family's buried story, suspended on the edge of dawn. Emily's hands moved deliberately yet hesitantly through the fragile stack of letters, their edges brittle from age, their script looping in elegant, fading ink. Each letter bore the weight of unspoken stories and concealed sorrows, threads of a past carefully woven and equally carefully hidden. The attic, once a sanctuary bathed in gentle, forgiving light, grew colder in the late afternoon shadows, the warm golden hues shifting to a harsher slate blue, mirroring the tightening grip of anxiety coiling in her chest. As she uncovered more letters addressed to her grandmother, the narrative grew increasingly fragmented yet undeniably poignant. Flashes of events that seemed to exist outside her memory pierced through the envelope of her upbringing, mentions of family gatherings where her mysterious brother was conspicuously absent, whispered regrets inked hastily across worn paper, and references to a scandal that had been shrouded in silence. The rhythm of the sea beyond the attic window thrummed a low, constant dirge, waves crashing relentlessly against the shore as if echoing the tumult in her mind. Her breath hitched each time she read a passage that contradicted the version of family she had been told all her life. Her fingers trembled when she unfolded a particularly worn letter, its ink smudged but the words stark with implication, a veiled accusation of betrayal, a plea for forgiveness, and a desperate hope that the past might remain buried. A sharp noise pulled her attention, something falling behind a pile of dusty trunks. She reached back, heart pounding, and pulled free a stack of additional letters, bound with a faded navy ribbon. The tension mounted as she recognized the handwriting, this time authored in a more desperate, uneven style. The letters revealed fractures within her family, moments of secrecy that felt like fractures in the foundation of her identity. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered to the shadows, voice barely carrying. The question echoed between the wooden rafters, unanswered. As twilight deepened, streaks of storm clouds darkened the horizon beyond the attic window. The flickering light overhead sputtered, momentarily bathing Emily in darkness before reluctantly igniting again. The shadows stretched and recoiled like living things eager to swallow the truths she'd unearthed. Seated among the relics of her lineage, Emily's heart thrummed with a turbulent mix of betrayal, curiosity, and a dawning fierce resolve. Each secret uncovered was a painful scar, yet also a compass pointing toward an unvarnished truth she knew she must face. Her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. Drawing it out with hesitating fingers, she found a message flashing on the screen, an anonymous text warning her to halt her inquiry, to abandon the attic, the secrets, and the quest for truth. The screen's blue light flickered erratically, casting an eerie pallor on her face. Courage and fear warred within her. She swallowed hard, closing the leather journal over the letters, a fragile barrier against the storm outside and within. Her gaze drifted toward the attic window, where slivers of twilight fought the gathering gloom. The fragmented photograph lay on the floor beside her, its torn edges catching the fading light, a stark emblem of the fractures in her family and the fractures within her own identity. The scene faded with the image of the torn photograph illuminated softly against the deepening shadows, a poignant reminder of the fractured journey ahead. Emily's voice, barely a whisper, lingered in the hush. "I have to know." The attic held its breath, the light flickered once more, and the screen closed, suspended between revelation and impending upheaval. The attic grew colder as the fading light of the late afternoon slipped away, hemorrhaging into the blue-gray dusk that cast long shadows across the worn floorboards. Emily sat amid scattered letters and old photographs, her hands trembling as she unfolded another fragile sheet, the ink smudged yet painfully clear. The words etched there pulled the breath from her lungs, revealing a tale cloaked in silence until now, a family scandal that shattered everything she thought she knew. Her eyes blurred with tears as she traced the lines describing a brother hidden away, a life erased from history, not just forgotten, but deliberately severed from the family's narrative. The letters spoke of betrayal, painful choices, and a secret incident that had rippled through generations, scattering fractures across the fabric of their lineage. The torn photograph lay beside her, a physical symbol of her fragmented identity, its jagged edges reflecting the sharp pain inside her chest. The attic window flickered weakly under the threat of gathering storm clouds, the fragile light casting eerie patterns that whispered of secrets waiting to be unearthed. Emily's voice was a fragile whisper, breaking the suffocating silence. Why was he hidden from me? Why was I kept in the dark? No answer came, only the relentless patter of rain beginning to drum against the aging rooftop, each drop a mournful echo of the past washing over her. The air thickened with the scent of damp wood and forgotten memories, as the attic seemed to close in, swallowing her in an embrace both familiar and suffocating. As the storm intensified outside, the letters revealed a forbidden name, a name her mother collapsed to whisper in a moment of weakness and terror in the days following the discoveries. The weight of that name, the curse veiled in silence, broke something in Emily. The revelation was not just a hidden fact but a rupture tearing at the roots of her identity and family ties. Her hands clenched the letters tightly, knuckles white, while her heart hammered wildly, a tempest mirroring the storm outside. The betrayal was visceral, deep, and raw. It was a fracturing of trust so profound it threatened to undo her very sense of self. Suddenly, a soft chime from an old clock echoed through the attic, its steady rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within. The sound anchored her fleeting composure, a beacon in a sea of unraveling truths. With a shaky breath, Emily stood, clutching the torn photograph as if to gather the scattered pieces of her soul, and held the letters close to her chest. The attic's muted shadows shifted, the fragile attic light casting an ethereal glow, a symbol of enlightenment amidst despair. Her eyes met the rain-slicked windowpane, where distant lightning traced jagged veins across the darkening sky, a harbinger of the turbulence yet to come. The camera lingered on her trembling figure framed by the window light, the attic embodying both imprisonment and revelation. A subtle tightening of her jaw marked the moment she resolved to unearth every buried truth, no matter the cost. The scene faded with the echo of the grandfather clock's chime, leaving the viewer suspended between revelation and impending confrontation, as Emma's journey hurtled toward a shattering reckoning, poised on the precipice of the unknown. The air inside the small, dusty attic felt impossibly thick, as if the walls themselves were weighing down upon Emily's chest. The attic window, streaked with salt and grime, allowed a tentative sliver of cold, gray light to spill in, dimming and flickering like a weak signal from a fading heartbeat. Outside, the relentless Atlantic wind tore at the gabled rooftops of the coastal town, its mournful howl echoing against the weathered timber like a dirge for the past that refused to remain buried. Emily sank slowly onto the wooden floor, the rough planks digging uncomfortably into her knees. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, the same uneven rhythm as her heart pounding in desperate warning. Around her lay the scattered remnants of centuries, yellowed letters with graceful, flowing script, fragile photographs warped by moisture and neglect, and her own leather-bound journal, dog-eared and worn as if it had absorbed every secret she tried to lock away. Her gaze locked on the torn photograph nestled amid the crumpled letters. Those jagged edges mirrored the fractures inside Hara family story, ripped apart, stitched back together with half-lies and whispered omissions. The image was small and intimate, yet the brother's face, vibrant against the sepia tones, stabbed into her identity with terrible clarity, a life she never knew, a part of herself lost in silence. The storm outside intensified, waves roaring wildly and crashing against jagged sea cliffs. The sound drifted through open shutters, mingling with the faint scratching of loose wood and the creak of the house settling under its own age. The noise surrounded Emily with a suffocating loneliness that draped over her like a cold, wet shroud. Her fingers grazed the torn edges of the photograph as if hoping the fragile paper might bleed answers. But silence answered back. Her lips parted, voice barely more than a hush. "Who are you? And why am I only just now knowing?" The question shattered the heavy stillness, echoing with a hurt too raw for words. No response came save for the distant whipping of wind and the occasional crack of thunder rumbling through the sky, a distant storm heralding the collapse of carefully built walls. Behind her, the leather journal lay open, pages fluttering faintly in the draft, a fragile dance of secrets and memories resisting forgetfulness but offering no easy solace. Emily's eyes blurred with unshed tears, shadows pooling beneath them as the weight of betrayal squeezed her ribs tighter. Every revelation had cleaved a deeper fissure within her, turning hope to ash. The air itself seemed thick with despair, muted blues and steel grays seeping into the warmth of the fading afternoon, coloring the space with a melancholic chill. Her hands trembled, curling around the journal as if it were the last lifeline tethering her to a semblance of self. The warmth of the attic window light, once a beacon of clarity, faded as darkened clouds stealthily wrapped the sky. With a heavy, bewildered sigh, Emily bowed her head, the fragile veneer finally cracking. The image of the brother she never knew, of truths concealed and shadows long cast, pressed down relentlessly. Her voice was barely audible, a faint whisper lost to the tempest. "Everything is unraveling. The camera held on her solitary figure, fragmented and fragile, the attic enshrouded in the deepening gloom. The frame lingered on the torn photograph beside her as the wind moaned through the darkened pane, carrying the promise of revelation cloaked in the bitter taste of loss. The scene dissolved into twilight, the soul of the story gesturing towards a descent into the labyrinth of memory, identity, and pain. The house stood silent under a blanket of dense fog, the roaring waves beyond muted by the thick mist. Emily's footsteps echoed hollowly as she wandered through the shadowed rooms, the cold air biting at her exposed forearms. The flicker of the attic window's dying light cast long, quivering shadows that stretched like specters along the peeling wallpaper, ghosts of past truths never spoken. Her breath came in ragged gasps, spiraling upwards, invisible wisps that seemed to dissolve into the heaviness around her. Clutching her leather journal tightly to her chest, Emily sank slowly into the worn armchair, a vessel of broken hopes and shattered dreams. The torn photograph lay loosely on the floor beside her, fragments of a broken identity scattered and waiting, pieced together only by the fragile hope she no longer fully believed in. Outside, the familiar cry of a lone seagull sliced through the stillness, a plaintive reminder of what was lost and irretrievable. The steady thrum of the sea beyond whispered of unyielding tides, relentless but distant, much like her grasp on reality slipping farther with every passing moment. Her eyes, glassy and unfocused, stared blankly at the attic ceiling while silence stretched between broken memories. The warmth that had once filled this room, shimmering through the window light, was replaced now by a numbing chill that seeped deep, settling like frost beneath her skin. A brittle sigh escaped her lips, the weight of absence heavy in the still air. The house seemed to exhale a sorrowful breath, an echo of the severed connections unraveling within her soul. The pages of her journal fluttered faintly, stirred by a draft too gentle, yet inexplicably ominous. Emily's voice cracked no more than a whisper strained by despair. Why? No answer, only the endless lull of the restless sea and the hushed creak of old timber reclaiming its solitude. The torn photograph on the floor caught the fluttering warmth of the dying light, its jagged edges stark against the worn wood, a mirror to the fractures in her heart. Time unfurled slowly, marked by the soft tick of an ancient clock whose tolls fell with relentless inevitability. The shadows deepened, pressing closer, as if to swallow the fragile residue of hope. A tremor ran through Emily's frame, her fingers loosening their grip on the journal, allowing it to slip gently onto the floor, a symbol of surrender as much as despair. Stillness enveloped the attic, a dark silence more profound than sound, as the scene closed on the solitary figure of Emily, shrouded in shadow, an image of isolation and loss, poised on the brink of unraveling. The screen faded to black with the faintest flicker of attic light, then nothing, an abyss of quiet, pregnant with the weight of an uncertain tomorrow. The attic was silent except for the slow, rhythmic tapping of rain against the cracked windowpane, a mournful hymn blending with the whisper of the sea beyond. Emily knelt on the cold wooden floor, the weight of her despair pressing down like the fog shrouding the town below. Her fingers trembled as they traced the edges of a folded, yellowed envelope that had slipped from beneath a loose floorboard, a final remnant of a story left unfinished. She unfolded the letter with reverence and hesitation, the fragile paper crackling beneath her touch. The words inscribed within were terse, yet bore the profound weight of someone reaching out from the shadows of a silent past. It was a note from her brother, ink fading but filled with a love and regret deeper than the ocean's depths. His words spoke of watching over her from afar, of a bond never severed by absence or secrecy. A single candle sputtered on a nearby shelf, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows that seemed to breathe life into the attic's dusty corners. The gentle glow quivered with an almost sentient warmth against the cold gloom enveloping Emily, a tentative beacon against the darkness she had endured. The familiar scent of aged leather from her worn journal mingled with the musty air, anchoring her to moments both fragile and enduring. Tears welled in her eyes as she read the final, heartfelt Lanessa confession of sorrow, a plea for forgiveness, and an enduring promise that he was never truly gone. The letter folded back, heavy with silent testimony, resonated within her like the distant crash of waves, a rhythm of heartbreak and hope interwoven. Exhaling slowly, she pressed the letter close to her heart, the ache transforming into a delicate pulse of resilience. The attic window caught a soft glow from a break in the clouds, a shaft of moonlight slicing through the fragile gloom, illuminating the torn photograph lying near by, the fractured image now imbued with meaning rather than loss. Emily's lips parted in a quivering whisper, "You were here all along." The sound was carried away by the rising breeze, mingling with the distant call of a night bird, an age-old lullaby that cradled the house and its secrets. The attic seemed to exhale, the oppressive weight of silence lifting as if bearing witness to a lost bond rekindled. Her silhouette bathed in the tender moonlight, Emily rose slowly, steadied by the fragile but undeniable spark kindling within. The leather journal clasped to her side felt less like a burden and more like a compass pointing toward an uncertain but necessary journey. Outside, the sea whispered against the shore, its timeless song a balm and an invitation, a call to embrace the truth beneath the tides of sorrow. The window light flickered softly, then held steady, casting a luminous path into tomorrow. The scene faded slowly, leaving the attic suspended between shadow and light, a space transformed by grief and love, haunted and healed, as Emily stepped forward into the unfolding narrative of her own becoming. The attic was bathed in the first gentle glow of dawn, casting a warm, amber hue across the dust-laden space. The storm that had threatened to drown her in darkness was subsiding, replaced by a quiet reassurance. Emily stood amid the relics of her family's long-buried secrets, her fingertips lingering on a faded letter, the ink faded but still legible. The air around her vibrated softly with the subtle shift of awakening awareness, a tentative step toward hope. Her breath was slow and deliberate, inhaling the earthy scent of aged paper and salt air that drifted through the cracked attic window. Outside, the ocean's endless surf whispered calmly, waves soothing the jagged edges of her battered soul. The storm's fury had carved scars into the landscape, yet in the quiet aftermath, new pathways began to emerge. Emily's eyes drifted over the scattered relics, fragments of her ancestral history that once seemed overwhelming now shimmered with a fragile promise. She reached instinctively for her leather journal, clutching it close as if the act might tether her to her own resilience. Her fingers traced the worn leather cover, the sensation grounding her amidst the chaos of revelations. A deep, calming breath escaped her lips, and she exhaled slowly, as if releasing a lifetime of unspoken doubts. The storm both outside and within was retreating, revealing the horizon's faint light. Though shadows still clung to the attic corners, a shimmer of golden hope filtered in, casting a delicate glow over the torn photograph and the scattered letters. The image of her brother, fragmented yet hauntingly alive, returned to her mind. That torn piece of family history had been a devastating secret, yet in this quiet dawn, it whispered softly of possibilities. A tentative smile crossed her face, fragile but real, as she slowly unfolded the letter she had kept hidden for so long. Its faded ink still bore the faint promise of truth, and within it, a truth she'd begun to feel, perhaps the key to her long-lost identity. Her gaze shifted to the attic window, where the first light cut through the remaining darkness, hinting at a new beginning. The storm's fury gave way to a calm, and the ocean's surface shimmered with the promise of renewal. The distant horizon was tinged with the warm hues of sunrise, a silent reminder that salvation often dawns in the quietest moments. Emily's hand gently closed the letter, pressing it to her heart. The attic held its breath as she stood, steady and rooted in newfound awareness. Her expression was a mixture of humility and quiet strength, a recognition that her journey into the shadows was only beginning, but that hope, even faint and tentative, was worth grasping. As she stepped toward the attic's edge, the camera captured her silhouette against the awakening light, small, vulnerable, yet undeniably resilient. The first rays of dawn illuminated her face, softening the lines carved by grief and fear. The scene faded slowly, the attic embracing her as the shadows of the night receded, leaving only traces of the dawn's promising, fragile but powerful sign of transformation unfolding. The attic was bathed in a muted, amber glow as the first light of dawn seeped through the cracks, casting a gentle warmth over the dust motes swirling in the stale air. Emily, standing amidst the relics of generations past, clutched the final letters she had uncovered, faded but powerful, heavy with unspoken truths. Her breathing was steady now, a deliberate effort to anchor herself amidst the storm of revelations threatening to drown her. A gust of wind stirred the attic curtains, and the distant roar of the sea softened to a whisper, as if acknowledging the change coursing through her veins. She moved slowly, her gaze fixed on the torn photograph that fluttered ever so slightly in the rising Breezian image of her brother she never knew, now a symbol of a fractured identity seeking wholeness. With a deep, trembling breath, Emily unfolded the letter she believed would sever her last ties to the false narrative her family had spun. As she read, her eyes widened in awe. The words spoke of a brother's love, his longing to be known, his regrets, and a final message of watchful protection across the years. An unspoken promise whispered in every line: he had never truly left her. The attic, once a chamber of secrets and despair, seemed to pulse with a new energy, vibrant, filled with the resonance of truth. The storm outside had diminished to a distant hum, and a golden light broke through the attic's battered window, streaming across her face and illuminating the tears slowly tracing her cheeks. Her trembling hands pressed the letter close to her heart, a visceral act of acceptance. The fractured edges of her identity scratched and torn as the photograph began to mend in her mind. For the first time since her journey into these hidden corridors of her past, she felt a fragile but undeniable hope, a whisper that the path to understanding and forgiveness was not just a distant dream but a tangible reality. The camera lingered on her face, a portrait of resolve, melting the shadows of grief with the dawn's first light. As she turned toward the attic door, the faint glow of the sunrise bathed the relics in warmth, a silent herald of renewal. Stepping forward, Emily clasped her leather journal, the weight of the past still present but now transformed. Her steps were deliberate, each one a testament to her courageous silent vow to carry the truth forward, no matter how difficult. The scene faded slowly, the attic receding into serenity, a space no longer haunted by secrets but alive with hope, the true beginning of her reawakened self, standing at the threshold of a new chapter, uncertain yet brave. The attic was now bathed in a powerful, almost divine light, an incandescent dawn spilling through the fractured glass, washing away layers of shadow that had cloaked her soul for so long. Emily stood at the center of the space, the torn photograph and faded letters gathered in her arms, symbols of a long-buried truth now brought into the healing glow of understanding. The storm that had raged outside was gone, replaced by a calm wind that carried the scent of salt and renewal. Her face was different, marked by quiet resolve, eyes shimmering with the ferocity of a soul reborn. Her breath was steady, each inhalation an affirmation of the newfound strength she had fought so fiercely to claim. She unwrapped the last letter, the ink still faint but undeniably present, the final message from her brother, penned in his voice, transcendent across the unseen distance. His words, filled with love and regret, a promise to watch over her always, resonated within her like a sacred hymn, a testament to unbroken bonds beyond the confines of time. The attic's luminous light flickered and danced, casting waves of hope across the space, as if acknowledging her victory over darkness. Emily lifted her gaze to the sky through the attic window, where the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, igniting the clouds with streaks of gold and pink, a celestial sign that pain, no matter how profound, could give way to peace. Her fingers, now no longer trembling, gently laid the torn photograph and letters back into their resting place, symbols of her journey etched into the fabric of her being. She slowly moved toward the attic door, each step a deliberate act of reclaiming her future. The cool air kissed her skin, yet within her, a fiery warmth ignited the strength to forge her own path, to redefine herself beyond the shadows. As she poised at the threshold, Emily took a final, deep breath, an act both of surrender and declaration. The camera lingered on her silhouette against the dawning light, the attic behind her bathed in a divine glow. A moment suspended in time, embodying the incipient dawn of understanding, forgiveness, and unyielding hope. With a gentle yet resolute push, she opened the attic door, stepping into the luminous embrace of a new day, the past cast behind her like shattered glass reflecting the brilliance of a future she dared to claim. The scene faded slowly, leaving her standing at the crossroads of revelation and renewal, last of her shadows dissolving in the radiant promise of dawn. The sun was just beginning to cast a soft, golden glow over the tranquil coastline, filtering through the fragile haze of dawn. Emily sat on a weathered bench amidst the gentle rustling of sea oats, her gaze fixed on the horizon where sky and ocean met in a tapestry of muted pinks and blues. The distant gulls cried softly, their voices a delicate echo of the tumult she had waged within herself. In her lap rested the final letter, an unassuming piece of paper now cradled like a precious relic. It was from her brother, an unseen presence during the storm of revelations she had just endured. Its words, ink faded yet clear, were a silent testament to the love and regret that lingered across the divide of time and silence. He had watched over her, unseen, yet always there, his spirit woven into the fabric of her journey. Her fingers gently brushed the paper, a tender act of acknowledgement of connection forged through pain, love, and acceptance. The tears she had fought so long to suppress welled beneath her lids, shining softly as they escaped, tracing delicate paths down her cheeks. Her heart, battered by secrets unveiled and truths reclaimed, began to soften in the face of this final gift. The wind carried the salty scent of the sea, whispering promises of renewal. The horizon blushed with the first light of sunrise, a gentle reminder that even the deepest wounds could find peace in the dawn's embrace. Emily's chest rose and fell slowly, her breathing now steady, her mind calm in inner stillness that had eluded her for so long. She closed her eyes momentarily, taking in the symphony of senses, the cool breeze on her skin, the distant hum of the waking shore, and the weightless hope blooming in her soul. Her trembling hands rested on her lap, palms open, ready, no longer fighting the darkness but embracing it as part of her story. The camera lingered on her tranquil face, illuminated by the dawn, a tableau of quiet victory and profound acceptance. Around her, the world seemed to pause in reverence, acknowledging the silent healing that had begun beneath the fragile first light. As the scene slowly faded to a wide shot, the sea shimmering in gold, Emily remained seated, a figure rooted in peace, gazing ahead into an unknown future laced with the promise of wholeness. The silent horizon whispered softly of new beginnings, inviting her and us to carry the lessons of truth, love, and reconciliation into the endless possibilities of dawn. The wind had calmed, and the horizon gleamed softly under the dawn's first light. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she cradled the final letter, her brother's last message, now vividly clear after all the darkness. The air around her was still, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths and the quiet promises of reconciliation. Her gaze, soft yet resolute, lingered on the letter's faded ink, now a testament not to sorrow but to forgiveness. She was seated on a worn wooden bench, overlooking the vast sea, each wave whispering secrets of eternity, reminding her that some bonds are unbreakable, even beyond the reaches of time and silence. The wind blew gently, carrying salt and hope into her lungs, infusing her with a renewed sense of purpose. Her fingers brushed the paper tenderly, as if affirming a vow that she would carry his love in her heart forever. That love, once hidden in shadows and silence, had become her guiding star, illuminating her path through the storm of revelations. The tears that had once threatened to drown her finally rolled down her cheeks, tears not of despair but of peace, of a future reclaimed. The camera slowly pulled back, framing her figure against the infinite horizon, small and vulnerable, yet undeniably whole. The clouds parted slightly, revealing streaks of golden light that kissed her face and the distant sea, a silent benediction of acceptance and renewal. It was the moment she had long sought yet never dared believe could be real, that her fractured identity was mended by the truth, and her familial bonds rekindled by understanding and forgiveness. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude, feeling the warmth seep into her bones. The past, with all its scars, was now a part of her, not as a wound but as a testament to her resilience. As she sat there, the scene faded into a tranquil tableau. Her silhouette bathed in the rising sun, the sea shimmering with promise, and the wind carrying her newfound peace outward, into the vast, endless horizon, an eternal emblem of hope reborn. The dawn's light spilled gently over the quiet shoreline, bathing the horizon in hues of soft pinks and luminous gold that slowly deepened into a promise of new beginnings. Emily sat alone on the weathered wooden pier, her fingers wrapped loosely around the final letter she had retrieved from the depths, an unseen message from her brother, long gone yet never truly absent. The waves lapped rhythmically, a timeless lullaby that soothed the aching fissures of her soul. Her eyes traced the inked words, an expression of love and regret that transcended time and space, anchoring her to a bond unbroken by death or secrets. Tears welled, gleaming in the dawn's first light, and her breath caught softly, a prayer cast into the ocean's infinite embrace. Behind her, the battered journal rested on her lap, its worn leather cover a symbol of resiliency, an enduring vessel that had carried her across storms of doubt and revelation. She closed her eyes momentarily, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace settle over her, as if her long journey into darkness had finally led her into the dawn. The wind carried her brother's message further, mingling with the salt air, whispering stories of unconditional love now woven into her very being. She clasped the letter close, her trembling hands an unspoken vow to honor the truths she had uncovered, to carry his memory forward as part of her own story. In the distance, the horizon shimmered, a silent testament to the unending cycle of loss and renewal. The vast sky stretched open, vast and forgiving, inviting her to step into her future with clarity and courage. The scene lingered on her serene face, illuminated by the dawn's gentle glow, a tableau of innocence reclaimed and wounds healed. As she slowly rose, the camera captured her silhouette against the sprawling sea, standing tall yet quietly humbled by her awakening. The waves continued their eternal serenade, embodying the timeless truth that healing begins with acceptance and love. The scene faded into a tranquil silence, a cinematic testament to the profound peace born of truth, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of family, an enduring echo in the endless horizon. Have you ever discovered a forgotten family secret? Share your experience with us.